The evaluation is going to be based on a couple of pointers based on the evaluation form. One of the goals is the member will deliver a well-organized speech based on the leadership style. And he may choose to speak about his own leadership style or leadership style in general and their impact. Some of the points in which I'm going to be evaluating Kireet are going to be what he excels at, what he wants to work on, and how he can challenge himself in future. Having said that about the evaluation, Kireet is going to be talking about a dynamic leadership, understanding your leadership style, which is a pathway speech, the speech number 2. And his speech will primarily discuss his leadership style and the general effect he has on colleagues and customers alike. He will explain how the idea of round tables in square halls relates to his plan to improve his understanding and execution via an experimental approach. So I'm going to be evaluating the speech, and I'm going to hand it back to Elaine.
Thank you. All right, Kireet, so we'd like to welcome you up to tell us your speech, please. You're welcome.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Elaine. Fellow Toastmasters, greetings. My topic for today is leadership styles and my experimental approach with them. Leaders share great attributes such as being purposeful and staying calm under fire. But great leaders embody highly sought after characteristics such as pragmatic optimism, leading by example, bearing an open mind, and using effective communication to tie in everything. My leadership is a mix of being democratic and innovative for business settings while employing the pace setting and affiliative styles for technical situations. In my domain, which is IT consulting, we typically start with very high-level directives, and that's when I need to solicit stakeholder feedback, make sure we have a memorandum of understanding, and typically have common congruency points. That's where I typically employ the democratic leadership style. And when the spectrum shifts from the business setting all the way over to technology and engineering, I start to use pace setting, whereby I lead by example, and I create thought leadership, and make sure that the affiliates pick up on this engine of work, and that continues. While I have exposure to coaching, authoritative, and bureaucratic leadership styles, I seldom get the opportunity to actually exercise them. I should also admit that in a live experiment, there's going to be very little room for error, where the lab is the office floor, which is why I plan on treading lightly throughout my experiments. This whole exercise is analogous to walking into large convention halls that are rectangular but appear squared due to their large dimensions. During my collegiate years, I often pondered why this is the case. Why is it that I walk into halls, lecture halls, be it, and find round tables? This seemed like an inefficient use of space. Nothing seemed to fit right, and it just wasn't a good fit. It wasn't until later that I realized that the actual answers lie in looking at those round tables as pedestals, basically viewing points that give you different thoughts or measures on a given scenario. And that's what I chose to make my blueprint. While the show will generally be in front of you, it's important for leaders to be cognizant of what's going on around them holistically, so that they can take into account various attributes such as risk, people, technology, gaps, and make the decision for a larger audience that relies on their leadership. And therein was my moment of clarity. I found out that a round table has seams that are welded perfectly, and it offers great transitions. Now, fast forwarding to present times, via introspection and experience, I've realized that human beings are quite instinctive. We are all instinctive. But if we don't go ahead and take steps to tone and hone our basal instincts, I don't think, for example, I can make the evolution for leadership styles. I cannot take myself from where I am today and really plot a course and learn other leadership styles. For example, the criteria for success at a company may be following the bureaucratic leadership style. But if my instinct is always to be angry or go for the flight response or be dismissive or jealous, I would really need to start toning my behavior and leadership style with logic. And that's what I plan on doing in my experiments. Personally, I learned well by trying, erring, learning, erring less, and creating a course correction route. Which brings me to my first experiment. What I plan on doing is using the bureaucratic leadership style for tight deadlines, where I could be pressed for quick decisions, and I plan on being a little more authoritative, prescriptive in my directives for teammates, colleagues, and subordinates alike. I do acknowledge that there could be a pitfall of micromanagement that may creep up, and that's where I'm hoping that I can borrow tenets from my innovative style and encourage more self-management as an example, or point-in-time decisions by the collective team. That's experiment 1. For experiment 2, I will declare that I'm not good at embodying the altruistic leadership style. It's just not in me to trust that everybody else will be a self-starter and they can move forward with very high-level direction. And that's my weakest point that I acknowledge that I need to learn and grow into. For this experiment, I plan on being more personal with my colleagues. So I'm really trying to personalize my approach in how I deal with subordinates and colleagues and architects and so on and so forth, so that I would understand their quirks on a one-on-one basis versus keeping a lot of management distance. This would especially let me address them during their time of need. For example, if there are skill gaps that we discover for a client engagement, if the client's going through a merger and acquisition, it's very important for me to step in and make sure that this person or a group has para-programming as an example. Now, I do recognize the pitfall here would be that I would probably end up nourishing this collective group versus recognizing the true basal need to lead by example. And again, I'm hoping to use a blend of leadership qualities, such as micro-example setting and para-programming that I previously mentioned, to close the gap. At this time, I'm only focused on these 2 leadership styles in hopes of creating a rinse and repeat cycle process for myself. In summary, that would consist of trying, erring, learning, erring less, and continuing that cycle. In closing, I hope you will always find your round tables and square halls. Thank you.
Kireet, thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine.